Hey all, Tom Moran here from Tom's Big Spiders. Well, this was supposed to be last week's video, but unfortunately I blew out my shoulder, so I had to take a week to recuperate. But we're back, and today I'm going to attempt the impossible. Several years ago, this challenge went around where folks were asking if you could only keep 5 tarantulas from your collection, which ones would they be? And I avoided this thing like the plague. And part of the reason is it becomes stressful. When I currently I have over 200 spiders up here. I believe about 130, 135 different species. A lot of these guys I've had for years and raised up for little slings. So just the thought of having to get rid of a bunch of them for whatever arbitrary reason was stressful enough. And then what happens is when I sit down and try to figure out, all right, which ones would I actually keep? It gets even more stressful because I think about having to give away some spiders that I have a lot of emotional attachment to. Listen, these are things that take years to grow up. So nobody wants to think about growing them up to a young adult and then shipping them off to somebody else or handing them off to somebody else. But finally, I decided to give it a good try, and I did a podcast about it, and some folks said, why don't you do a video to show off some of them? So here we are. We're at the video stage of it. So again, I want to make it very clear. Anytime I do a list, these aren't supposed to be definitive lists. They're supposed to be fun. I want to make that very clear. These are all fun. So if you start watching this and you find yourself getting upset because I left the species off that you really like and you're disappointed about, remember, it's all just a game. So I hate doing these sometimes because people take them way more seriously than they need to be. And I will tell you, there are a lot of spiders that didn't make this list that I was kind of shocked at. It doesn't mean I don't love them as much as the other ones. It's just if you have 5, you only have so many you can pick. So for example, one of my favorite genera of species of tarantulas ever is I don't have a representative on the list proper. And that's because I couldn't figure out a place where to put it. So please understand, this isn't a list of my top favorite species. That's important to note. What I did when I sat down and came up with this is I made a preliminary list that was about, 30 spiders or so, and then kind of looked at which ones carried more sentimental value. I had some that were given to me for gifts, some that just I love over the course of the years I've developed an affinity towards. So that's it. It's for fun, and obviously at the end, I'm going to challenge everybody watching, and I especially want to hear from you folks with larger collections. Which would your 5 be? So enough of me talking. Let's pretend like somebody came in here and said, I can only keep 5 spiders. I'm going to tell you right off the bat, I'm going to try to cheat every way I can through the course of this, but we're going to try to figure out what are the 5 spiders I would keep. All right, to kick this one off at number 5, I'm going to choose, and this one's going to cause a little controversy, but hear me out, my Monocentropus balfury communal. I have 5 females in it. This is the Socotra Island Blue Baboon. Amazing spiders in their own right, even just by themselves, but the communal has just been amazing. Now, for folks that are about to say I'm cheating, I'm assuming that if I've been told I can only keep 5 tarantulas, it's because I'm being limited to 5 enclosures. Hey, I can play the game any way I want. So I'm going to choose this one. I've had these guys since June of 2016. At that time, when I picked them up, I had 9 about 1/2 inch to 3/4 inch slings or so. And they grew super fast. They grew well. There was no friction. As a matter of fact, I caught a lot of video, a cool video of them, bickering over food, but not harming each other. Now, what ended up happening is 4 of the spiders ended up maturing male. The first male matured out after about 18 months. The second one, it was almost 3 years later, which I found incredibly cool. But anyway, the 5 females are still alive. That's what you're seeing here, and still living together quite peacefully. I love these spiders. So Monocentropus balfury on its own is amazing. But with these guys here, the fact that they're still living together peacefully, every once in a while when it gets super hot after feeding, I see them all out and about, sitting out in the open. Now, the wintertime, they tend to disappear. You'd never know there's anything in there, but there is nothing like seeing 5 of these beautiful girls just perched out peacefully together out in the open on all that webbing. So number 5, I have to go with it, is going to be Monocentropus balfury communal. If I had to choose only one of them, I may just let the communal go on its own and keep my single female, which I've had now for about 12 years, I think. She's kind of old. The only reason I didn't choose her is because, again, that whole communal aspect is cool, and it's a way to cheat this stupid idea.
All right, so for my second choice, I'd have to go with my Lasiodora parahybana, or salmon bird eater, known as Big Bertha. For anybody that has watched my videos for a while, Big Bertha is usually the one that's to my left that's climbing around her enclosure. So what we're going to do is try to feed her here because she just molted. And, of course, she's not going to eat. Oh, there we go. So this girl is monstrous. Now, at the beginning of this, I explained that when trying to choose the spiders I would keep, a lot of it will come down to sentimentality, meaning that I have certain spiders that just have sentimental value to me. This is one of them. Now, way back when I first started getting serious into keeping tarantulas, I had bought a little LP sling that I was trying to raise up. This is when I desperately wanted a giant spider. I was obsessed with the large ones. And obviously the largest spider out there is the Theraphosa blondie. I wanted one, but after doing my research, realized that I was not ready to keep one yet. I did not have the experience needed to successfully raise one up. So then, like many folks, I found out about the salmon bird eater. That is a spider that supposedly gets almost as big. It's supposedly fast growing. Well, my sling was not growing particularly fast at all, which kind of threw me off a bit because I was expecting a really fast growing one. So for my birthday back in 2013, Billy ended up picking me up a sexed female. She was around 3 inches or 3.5 inches. I'm going to get a little light on here so you can see this one better. And this is her here. This one, after that point, she grew very, very quickly and got very, very large. And I just absolutely adore this spider. She's got a lot of personality. She shows up again in all of the videos. And her last molt, we measured out. I'm going to flash it up on the screen in a moment. Her last molt, this plate is around 8 3/4 inches. The molt has shrunk a little bit, but it easily spanned the entire plate. So she is pushing around 9 inches now. So that is a big, big spider. And unfortunately, there's no way to really get a good idea of how big she is without sticking something in there that, like my hand, I'd love to be able to put my hand in there and have her crawl on it, just so you could see she is large, a very massive, heavy-bodied spider. Now, the cool thing about salmon bird eaters is they do have those salmon hairs. I'm going to see if I can get them to show up. You can see them around in there, although not really popping, but you can see some of that. There we go. Some of that coloration. Now, after a molt, they tend to be jet black with that salmon coloring. And then as they get closer to going in or getting to pre-molt, you'll start to see that color fade out and it turns into more of a brown, but just awesome spiders. Very bulky, very full-bodied, and a hobby staple, quite frankly. So this one it comes down to, and I have to say in a minute, I'm going to do my alternate. My alternate is one of my favorite all-time spiders as well, and one of my favorite all-time species. But this one, because of the fact it was purchased by Billy, has a lot of meaning to me. So I would definitely have to keep my L. parahybana and my salmon bird eater, Big Bertha, if I could only keep 5. Now, as for my alternate, I would have to choose one of my Theraphosa blondie or Goliath bird eaters. I absolutely love these spiders. I got these ones as slings back in 2017, I believe, and they grew like monsters. And I was actually a little worried about getting them at the time because back in the day when you read about Theraphosa blondie, they're supposedly super difficult to keep, but mine have been doing fantastically. They both just molted. I'm going to show a molt here. The last molt was over 9 inches, so these guys are probably pushing 9.5 inches or so. I'm going to go ahead and see if this one will eat on camera. If I can get the roach. Yep. All right, there we go. They are monstrous eaters. These guys get large dubia roaches, but they're beautiful spiders. And I don't know if it's coming out, but I hear a lot for folks who just go, they're just big brown spiders. Well, A, they're enormous. So to just say they're, big brown spiders takes away from the fact that these guys are absolutely huge. And B, if you can look and see there, and this one molted a little while ago, you can see the pink striping on the knees, which I think is gorgeous. But they are just amazing. And mine have been very, very visible. I do have a spot here. If we look over, I do allow them to burrow, and sometimes if they get disturbed, they'll go down there, but more often they just sit out in the open. They're calm as can be. Mine have never been big hair kickers, although obviously temperament may vary from spider to spider, and I know I've heard from plenty of folks that say theirs kick quite a few hairs. But if I couldn't pick my LP, I'm going with another giant, which is going to be my Theraphosa blondie or Goliath bird eater.
All right, unfortunately, this next one's going to take kind of a sad turn, so let me explain. When I first made this list for my podcast, I chose for the third spot, Pletheria Regalas. I have a beautiful female who is pushing, actually, I originally put 11 years old, 12 years old. She's been around for a long time. She was actually fairly decent size when I got her. I absolutely adore this spider. It's one of my favorites. Just beautiful with the sharp contrast between those whites and the grays and the blacks. I have something about the monochromatic spiders that just, they look so beautiful to me. So anyway, I had originally picked her as my top choice, and and there was two reasons for it. Number one, she's one of my favorite. Number two, I'm thinking in terms of if I could only keep 5, she was getting up there, so eventually when she passed, I'd be able to get another spider and an alternate. Well, my son Ron and I were up doing feedings the other night. He had just seen her up and about 2 days earlier. He said, man, this spider's beautiful. We take the cage down and I see some flies. It had been really hot up here. That familiar smell, she had passed away. Now, again, this was old age, but I'm still bummed. We're both bummed about it. So what I'm going to do is on the fly alternate, have my alternate choice, which would be my Pletheria vittata or ghost ornamental. If anybody's followed my channel or my podcast for any length of time, you know that the first Poke I ever got was a sexed female that was about 3 to 4 inches or so, and I absolutely fell in love with the genus. This here is one of my, after she passed away, I got 2 others. This is one of them. She is gorgeous. You can see same thing, that pale coloration, the black and white and gray, just an amazing spider. Pletheria vittata will always have a special place in my heart, obviously because of the fact that it was my first Poke, and again, I love those monochromatic spiders. And it would be obviously criminal of me not to include a Pletheria species in this list or in my collection if I can only keep 5. So for my choice, the first one was going to be P. regalis. Very sad to see her go, and I'll definitely have to replace that gap in my collection. But we're going to move on to this one here, which is Pletheria vittata. All right, so next up, this one may come as a bit of a surprise to some people, but I absolutely adore this spider. This is my Grammostola rosea, or the Rosehair tarantula. I got this one as a sling in January of 2014, so over 10 years ago. At the time, she was about 0.3 inches. Well, right now, she is a whopping 3 inches or 7.62 centimeters. This is one of the slowest growing spiders I've ever raised. My son, Ron, was up here the other night helping me with feeding because I hurt my shoulder and he was helping me doing some of the feedings. And we brought this one out and he's like, man, this thing still hasn't grown. It's been kind of a running joke. But this one has had a ton of personality. As a little baby, I had her set up in one of the small AMAC boxes and I glued a piece of cork bark to the side of the box that stuck up above the substrate a bit. And what happened is the substrate started to kind of settle, which left a lot of that cork bark exposed. And she would climb up to the top of the cork bark and stay right on top, almost like an arboreal. It was one of the cutest things ever. Now, again, slow growing, I get it. And a lot of folks don't have the patience for it. And I totally understand that. For this one, I really just want to see it through to adulthood. It's one of those things. I've kept the spider for so long. She's become one of my favorites. And it would be a shame if, God forbid, because of this challenge, I had to get rid of all my spiders but 5 if I couldn't see her, through to adulthood. So that's one of the reasons why I picked her. The other reason is, if anybody that's watching my channel knows, the first tarantula I ever got was a G. Grammostola porteri, which is now under G. rosea or Rosehair. She was called the Queen, and I absolutely adored that spider, so I would love to have another one. Let's see if this one will eat. And of course, no. She's actually been an amazing eater, and her slow growth rate hasn't been because she isn't eating. It's mostly just because of the fact that she grows slowly. So that's another cool thing. I know these guys have a reputation for fasting, but I do believe that some of that came from the fact that back in the day, like when I got my first queen back in the 90s, I believe everything coming in was wild caught. They were just going into Chile and ripping these guys out of the wild, which is a shame. They can no longer do that. But back in the day, you get them from Chile and they'd go into their normal, well, it's wintertime, I'm not going to eat for a bit, because that's what it would have been like in the wild. But now I haven't had any issues. I have this one and I have a G. porteri sling that I'm also raising up. Same thing. She eats like a pig. She just doesn't grow. But amazing spiders. Again, a lot of the ones on this list are going to be hobby staples, or should be hobby staples, because they've been around the hobby for quite some time and they make great pets. So there we go. This one would definitely be on my list of ones to keep. This is my Grammostola rosea. Maybe the Princess. That would be a good name for her, the Princess. We'll call her the Princess.
And although we're going to call this one my alternate, I don't know. It's going to come down to these two. I'm probably just going to cheat and grab them both because I can't let this one go. This is Nikki, my Aphonopelma calcodes. Anybody that's followed the story of Nikki knows that she has been another one of my slow-growing tarantulas. I believe I got her back in 2012, and at that time, she was a sexed juvenile. She was about 1 3/4 inches. Right now, she's a whopping, I would say about 3.5 inches, maybe 4 tops. So a little young adult, but she is a spunky little booger. I absolutely adore her. Again, the name Nikki, I'm almost embarrassed to say, comes from Nicki Minaj because back in the day, she had a gigantic booty, which we thought was funny, so we kind of gave her a quirky nickname. I didn't think it would stick, but it stuck. She's Nikki from now on, but I love this little spider. Now, normally, I can't believe she's being this well-behaved. Normally, she's one of the spiders I got that when I open the enclosure, she immediately bolts for the edge like she wants to come out and explore. Again, I was up here with my son, Roan, the other day, and he was asking about Nikki, so we took her out. I had this thing open for a total of probably 4 or 5 seconds before she made for the breach. But an awesome spider. I don't think that we can leave Nikki out. I can't trade off a spider that has a name, so we'd probably bring her with us. I'm going to cheat on this one and say I'm bringing both of them. How's that? You can't stop me.
All right, so this is going to be my number one alternative, and basically this is going to be the spider that, although people told me I could only pick 5, I'm going to sneak this one regardless. This one has to get on the list. But we're talking about my Eucratocellus Pachypus or stout leg baboon. I absolutely adore. I have 2 females that I've had for about 12 years now, maybe even 13 years, and they are just amazing spiders. So unique looking with those thick back legs, so laid back for a quote unquote baboon spider. In fact, my son Rowan and I were feeding the other day and I took her down and he was shocked to find out that that was actually a baboon species or an African spider because she just kind of sat calmly on the surface. We dropped in a couple roaches. She very cutely scarfed them all up and then just made her way slowly to her new burrow and went down and started eating. So they're fantastic spiders, very unique looking, very laid back. I obviously don't handle spiders and I would never handle an old world, but when you watch these guys, they have the whole vibe of a new world where they just kind of sit there like a Brachypelma, Phonopelma, Grammostola. Now again, they do have that venom. I would not put my hand in there. I want to make that very, very clear, but it's that level of cuteness and calmness that really kind of shines with them. So when I went around the room after making the original list and realized that I did not have her even, or either of them even mentioned on it, it was a gross oversight on my part. I need to bring these spiders with me. So somehow if I can grab 6, I'm going to grab this one and pull it in, or else I may even have to go back and swap one of the originals out. Again, this is why these lists are so difficult.
All right, number 1 on my list, and if I could only keep one spider, this is probably going to be shocking to people, but anybody that's listened to my podcast and followed my YouTube videos knows that this is probably my favorite species, and it's one of my favorite spiders. So we're bringing together both sentimentality and the fact that it's one of my favorite species. This is my Grammostola pulchripes, or Choco goldeny. We're going to try to draw her out a little bit so I can get a shot. No, she's going to eat really daintily right there, but anyway, I first got these back, I believe they were 1/3 of an inch slings back in late 2013. And at that time, I had become obsessed with Choco goldenys. I love the name of it. I love the look. You can see the golden tones on the knees there, the striping that gives them their common name. I just absolutely was obsessed with these spiders. Plus, I had heard these rumors that they get to be like 8 inches or so, which was another attractive trait. So anyway, I pick up these tiny little slings. I set them up in AMAC boxes, mostly dry substrate, probably 1.5 inches of dirt, little cork bark hide. They eat a little bit, at least I think they're eating. I'm dropping in pre-killed prey. And then all of a sudden, right around November of that first year, they buried themselves and they disappeared. So I was like, all right, this is normal. I've heard that spiders can bury themselves. This is something that they often do. I didn't want to worry about it. Well, I didn't see any signs of life from these spiders for months. I believe they buried themselves from November to April. Right around April, I go to check on them one day. It was almost to the point where I was going to dig them up. And I saw one of them out, and I was completely shocked. It didn't look like it had molted. It looked still fairly fat like it did the last time I saw it, but I dropped in a prey at him and immediately ate. And a couple days later, the other one came out as well. And what ended up happening is one of them was a male. He ended up maturing, and I sent him out several years ago to a buddy of mine to pair. And this is the female here. Now, again, this is supposedly one of the larger species of Grammostola. This one here is probably around 6 inches or 15 13¼ centimeters or so. But consider this is a very slow-growing species, so she will probably continue to grow and continue to put on size. Just look at that. Just a beautiful spider. Now, over the years, I've just developed an affinity for this species of spider. And I have 2 others, both of them females, that I'm keeping. I do not handle tarantulas. I make it a point not to handle tarantulas. I've handled a couple back in the day just because I used to be arachnophobic, and it's kind of a nice way to prove that you're over your fear of it. But generally speaking, I don't put my hands anywhere near them. But if I'm being completely honest, 2 of them have ended up in my hands on more than one occasion. They kind of go out exploring. They're usually very, very docile as adults, which is why these make a lot of best beginner species for tarantulas, people just getting into keeping tarantulas. Now, obviously, there are always the odd ducks out there. I've had some people, every time I talk about how tame mine are or relaxed mine are, somebody will go, I have a crazy one. But more often than not, they're very laid back. Now, as you'll see this one here, after her last molt, her carapace darkened up a bit. Sometimes they will have purple on their carapace. I've had my other ones actually have some purple, but just an overall gorgeous, visible. That can't be understated. These guys, I hate to use the term pet rocks, but when you say pet rock, that's a spider that is going to basically sit out in the open at all times. Sometimes, like early this winter, I thought she was dead at one point. She just sat in a corner and scrunched up for like 3 straight days. I finally went and kind of checked on her, and she lazily turned around like, please leave me alone. But just easily one of my favorite all-time species, and I just love this girl. So this one's kind of an easy one. If it came down to it, I'm going to be upset if I can only pick 5 spiders. Let's call it as it is. It's not something I want to even think about. The fact that I'm finally doing this video is a minor miracle because I've avoided it for years. But if it came down to it, if somebody said you can only keep one, my G. Pulchripes Choco Golden Knee female here, she'd probably be the one.
So even after doing the podcast, there were a bunch of spiders that I realized weren't on this that I thought was a travesty. And then when I started redoing this or going back through this to make the video, they became more glaring omissions that I care to count. It's rough. And I have ones like, for example, my curtain web spiders. I adore them. But when I keep them longevity-wise, they probably won't be with me all that much longer. So if I want more bang for my buck, I want a longer living species. However, here are some of the other alternates that I considered and spiders that it would be really difficult. It'd be one of those things like when you go to hand them over to somebody and they're trying to take it from you and you're holding onto it because you don't want to let them go. These are some of the ones that didn't make the list, but are some of my favorite species of all time. First off, you notice we don't have an OBT on the list. I love P. murinus. I've raised up many of them. I've been kind of a proponent of folks keeping these over many, many years. You can see one of my females here. She is stunning. They are gorgeous spiders. They aren't nearly as bad as people make them out to be. And as you can see with this girl, she just grabs her prey and goes into the web. Later on, she makes a little burrito out of it. So I think they're a spider that gets a bad rep, but they are a beautiful spider, an amazing spider. So I'm really hurting for not having one on this list. Also, possibly the most glaring omission on this list was the fact that I didn't have a single Formictopus species, one of my favorite genera of spiders ever. I have 15 or 16 different colorations or types of Formictopus species. And this here is one of my pecan cerides. I've had her for about, I believe, 10 years or so. So one of my old girls, I would definitely want to smuggle one of these. Again, my thought process is I'd tell the person it's making me choose and I'm only taking 5, but I'd sneak other ones in. I just couldn't figure out which ones to keep. If I could only keep one Formictopus species, it would have to be my female. Then here we have my S. philippinus. It's kind of my trademark spider. I love the Philippinus, the Philippine tangerine, one of my favorite all-time species. This is one of my females eating. This is actually the daughter of the first, or one of the 2 first O. philippinus, or S. philippinus now, I've ever kept. I love these guys. I love orange spiders. These are sleek, velvety, and just amazing animals. And then finally, I mentioned this one a while back. This is my Brachypelma classy. She just molted. She is stunning. Just an amazing spider. Those background colors have darkened up to black. You have the pink on the lower legs. Just a beautiful spider overall. So I kind of want to include her as well as one that I would possibly take, the alternatives to the alternatives. I don't know. Honestly, this thing has been a nightmare to make, so I hope you guys just appreciate me giving it a try. Truth is, I probably fight tooth and nail to keep every single one of the ones I have here because I love them all. So again, I want to hear from you guys. What are your lists? What are your top 5, your top 10? We can cheat top 5 with an alternative each. Top 10, whatever it may be. Don't stress yourself out, but give this one a shot. Tell me what you got. I think this could make for very interesting comments. And remember, another reminder, this is supposed to be for fun. So just because a spider or certain species didn't make it on the list doesn't mean I don't like the spider. I can already see the comments, but I thought you loved these guys. I do. I just only have 5, or in this case, I think, what did I give myself? Probably 15 when all is said and done. So that will do it for this one. As always, if you liked it enough to subscribe, very much appreciated. You can click that little circle up there. I'm not going to do this one, but this one hurts. If you like to check out other videos, I'll put them over here. If you take the time to comment, I'll take the time to respond. Just know it can take me a little while. Guys, as always, stay safe. Catch you all next time.